ETM Hotel, Brittany Sean. Welcome in peace. My name is Sean. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to Science with Sean. Um, Please like the show, share the show, tell a friend, tell a friend. We are in the building. I am streaming from both channels, Science with Sean and the Macho Warrior Clan YouTube channel. People been asking where I've been, where I'm at, am I okay? All those things I appreciate. You know what I'm saying? People, uh, reaching out, trying to see what's going on with me. Am I good? Whatever. I don't know why I wouldn't be good, but I mean, I'm ticking, man. I just been quiet, you know what I mean? Just kind of dealing with the information. Delta Cron right now is a hypothesis. They're still doing research on that to see if it's a reality. But please like the show, share the show, tell a friend, tell a friend. That we're live, man, and we gonna get it in. So we got a lot to go over. Bear with me, you know what I'm saying? I got me a little apple juice. I know I'm gonna be talking for a little while, so I want to kind of make sure that I'm good. Now I just been chilling, minding my business. You know what I'm saying? Just staying focused. You know what I mean? Trying to get back in the groove of because I took a while off from reading. Really, I was reading every hour, 2 hours a day, something like that. So I took a break from that, and I got to get myself back on schedule. Not only with that, but just also get myself back running and stuff like that. So I'm just slowly trying to work myself into that and then make the most out of those opportunities when I can. But peace to Pure Black Keenan, Omar, peace to y'all, peace to Sister Althea, Ket, Zane, and everything is everything. And peace to the Russian bot that just showed up. Peace, Russian bot. So again, man, like the show, share the show. We're gonna get it in. So if you haven't heard, there's a couple of things that actually came out. Somebody put up some on Facebook the other day, but I actually made a little post about it last night. Just trying to sit on the information for as long as I can before I bring it out to people, and just reviewing and going through all the latest information. I want to talk about Fauci and Rand Paul. I think that this is Dr. Fauci and Rand Paul is kind of getting ridiculous because Rand Paul has a personal vendetta out for this guy, man, and it doesn't show up until this last discussion for Rand Paul. And I'm gonna show y'all exactly what I'm referring to. If you haven't seen it, I'm gonna play a little bit of it, and I'm gonna let y'all get into it real quick, and then we're gonna get into our bill. So again, like the show, share the show, tell a friend. We live and we in this mother on the Mossy and the Science with Sean YouTube channel. So
to lie to Congress. Do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th?
So in this discussion right here, again, it's another Senate hearing, another congressional hearing. They're having these very quite not very, but quite often. And in these Senate hearings, a lot of information is coming up. You know what I'm saying? And they continue to clash. But Fauci does something significant in this exchange toward the end of this video that kills everything. So it's only 3 minutes and 38 seconds. Let's just hit this exchange and then we'll get into our bill. But please pay close attention to what Rand Paul is doing and how Fauci counters.
11th, where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan. Senator Paul, I have never lied.
Mind you, every congressional hearing, Rand Paul talks about gain of function, nothing else. This is one of his Republican talking points as he pushes and leans on Fauci.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it's a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan? Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function. Let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans.
Right.
You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about. Okay, you get one person.
Let's read from the NIH definition of gain of function. This is your definition that you guys wrote. It says that scientific research that increases the transmissibility among mammals is gain of function. They took animal viruses that only occur in animals and they increased their transmissibility to humans. How you can say that is not gain of function?
It is not.
It's a dance, and you're dancing.
So real quick, for anybody that doesn't really understand the definition of gain of function, Rand Paul jacked it up. That's not the definition of gain of function. Because spillover viruses wouldn't be spillover viruses. Human reservoirs wouldn't be able to pass the virus on to animals, and animals wouldn't be able to pass it on to humans. He doesn't understand what gain of function is, and he doesn't really comprehend the argument. But he's not going to let Fauci speak. But I'm gonna let this 3:30. I'm gonna let the next 2 minutes get out of the way so we can get into the bill.
Around this because you're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
And let's send Dr. Fauci.
I have to. Well, now you're getting into something. If the point that you are making is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created Sars Cov2, that's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Well, wait a minute.
It didn't come from the lab, but all the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab. And there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including your.
By the way, there's no evidence or information at all that will support not a hypothesis because it is not an educated guess. There's no data that exists to this present day, 2 years in the pandemic, that will prove Rand Paul to be right at all. There's no data. He says there's evidence. Listen to him closely. There's no data. We have none, zero, that points to any virus coming from the lab. The gene sequencing and the backtracking and the research that has been done, the virus is going toward Wuhan lab, not away. So he's wrong.
Evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
I totally
This committee will allow the witness to respond.
I totally resent the lie that you are now propagating, Senator, because if you look at the viruses that were used in the experiments, that were given in the annual reports, that were published in the literature, it is molecularly impossible.
No one's saying those viruses caused it.
It is molecularly.
Those viruses caused the pandemic. What we're alleging is that gain of function research was going on in that lab, and NIH funded it.
That is
not
not.
Get away from it. It meets your definition, and you are obfuscating the truth.
I'm not obfuscating the truth.
Senator
You're the
Paul's
one.
time is expired, but I will allow the witness to.
Let me just finish. I want everyone to understand that if you look at those viruses, and that's judged by qualified virologists and evolutionary biologists, those viruses are molecularly impossible
No one's
to
saying
result
they are. No
in
one's saying
SARS
those viruses
CoV-2.
caused the pandemic.
Senator Paul,
We're saying they are gain of function viruses because they were
They're not.
animal viruses that became more transmissible in human, and you funded it.
And
You
you
admit the truth.
and you
Senator
implying
Paul, your time has expired, and I will allow witnesses who come before this committee to respond.
and you are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individuals. I totally resent
it could
that.
have
And
been.
if anybody
could
is
have been.
lying here, Senator, it is you.
Now, that's one video. All right. Let me get y'all to the next video. It's very important that I ran that down, so we all know what's going on here. That's the first one. If anybody remember that, that's actually a few months ago. But here we go again with the most recent exchange between the two, and the talking points are the same.
Senator Paul.
Dr. Fauci, the idea that a government official like yourself would claim unilaterally to represent science, and that any criticism of you would be considered a criticism of science itself, is quite dangerous. Central planning, whether it be of the economy or of science, is risky because of the fallibility of the planner. It would not be so catastrophic if the planner were simply one physician in Peoria. Then the mistakes would only affect that physician's patients, the people who chose that position. But when the planner is a government official like yourself who rules by mandate, the errors are compounded and become much more harmful.
Who rules by mandate? Remember that. Watch how many times Rand Paul uses the word mandate in his conversation. And then I'm going to fast forward all the arguing, and then I'm going to get to the end of this.
Planner who believes he is the science leads to an arrogance that justifies, in his mind, using government resources to smear and to destroy the reputations of other scientists who disagree with him. In an email exchange with Dr. Collins, you conspire, and I quote here directly from the email, to create a quick and devastating published takedown of three prominent epidemiologists from Harvard, Oxford, and Stanford. Apparently, there's a lot of fringe epidemiologists at Harvard, Oxford, and Stanford. And you quote in the email that they were from Dr. Collins, and you agree that they are fringe. And immediately there's this takedown effort. A published takedown, though, doesn't exactly conjure up the image of a dispassionate scientist. Instead of engaging them on the merits, you and Dr. Collins sought to smear them as fringe and take them down. And not in journals, in lay press. This is not only antithetical to the scientific method, it's the epitome of cheap politics, and it's reprehensible, Dr. Fauci. Do you really think it's appropriate to use your $420,000 salary to attack scientists that disagree with you?
The email you're referring to was an email of Dr. Collins to me. If you look at the email
that you responded to and hurried up and said, I can do it. We got something in Wired magazine.
No. I think in usual fashion, Senator, you are distorting everything about me.
Did you ever object to Dr. Collins' characterization of them as fringe? Did you write back to Dr. Collins and say, no, they're not fringe, they're esteemed scientists, and it would be beneath me
I did not
do that? You responded to him that you would do it. And you immediately got an article in Wired and you sent it back to him and said, hey, look, I've got him. I nailed him in Wired of all scientific
That's not what went on. There you go again. You just do the same thing every year.
That was your response. And this wasn't the only time. So your desire to take down people.
Incorrect. As usual, Senator, you are incorrect. Almost everything you said.
No, you deny, but the emails tell the truth of this.
No.
This wasn't the only time. Your desire to take down those who disagree with you didn't stop with Harvard, Oxford, and Stanford. You conspired with Peter Daszak, who you communicated with privately, and other members of the scientific community that wrote opinion pieces for Nature. 5 of them signed a paper for Nature, an opinion piece. 17 signed a paper that called it conspiracy theory, the idea that the virus could have originated in the lab. Do you think words like conspiracy theory should be in a scientific paper?
Senator, I never used that word when I was referring to it. You're distorting virtually everything.
Did you communicate with the 5 scientists who wrote the opinion piece in Nature where they were describing, there's no way this could have come from the lab?
Me. Did
you talk with any of those scientists privately?
You keep distorting the truth. It is stunning how you do. Did you talk to any of the scientists privately?
Yes. Who wrote the opinion? You did. Well, what were they telling you privately?
Well, let me explain. You're going back to that original discussion when I brought together a group of people to look at every possibility with an open mind. So not only are you distorting it, you are completely turning it around. As
Well, most of the
usually
scientists
do.
that came to you privately, did they come to you privately and say, no way this came from the lab? Or was their initial impression, Dr. Gary and others that were involved, was their initial impression actually that it looked very suspicious for a virus that came from a lab?
Senator, we are here at a committee to look at a virus now that has killed almost 900,000 people. And the purpose of the committee was to try and get things out, how we can help to get the American public. And you keep coming back to personal attacks on me that have absolutely no relevance to reality.
Do you think anybody has had more influence over
let
our
me
response to
finish.
this than you have? Do you think
Madam
it's a great
Chair, can
success? Do you think it's a great success what's happened so far? Do you think
You-
the
you have
lockdowns
said-
are good for our kids? Do you think we slowed down the death rate? More people have died now under President Biden than did under President Trump. You are the one responsible. You are the architect. You are the lead architect for the response from the government. And now 800,000 people have died.
Right.
Do you think it's a winning success, what you've advocated for government?
Senator, first of all, if you look at everything that I said, you accuse me of in a monolithic way telling people what they need to do. Everything that I've said has been in support of the CDC guidelines. Wear a mask, get boosted.
And you've advocated
vaccinated.
to make it coercive.
Take
and
a look at
coerced, and
everything
you've
that I've
advocated that
said.
it be done by mandate.
But
You've advocated that your infallible opinion be dictated by law.
Right. So again, Madam Chair, I would like just a couple of minutes because this happens all the time. You personally attack me, and with absolutely not a shred of evidence of anything you say. So I would like to make something clear to the committee. He's doing this for political reasons. What you need to do is, he said in front of this committee.
You think your takedown of prominent epidemiologists was not political?
You don't want me
That
to
was my
finish, but
question.
you know what I'm going to say.
That was the question.
Senator,
Were you
we
political
will-
in taking
at this-
down
at
these
this
three
point-
prominent
Senator
epidemiologists?
Paul, if you would please, I'm going to allow this, Dr. Fauci to respond. We have a number of senators who would like to ask questions, and I would like him to be able to respond. Please do so.
So the last time we had a committee, or the time before, he was accusing me of being responsible for the death of 4 to 5 million people, which is really irresponsible. And I say, why is he doing that? There are two reasons why that's really bad. The first is it distracts from what we're all trying to do here today, is get our arms around the epidemic and the pandemic that we're dealing with, not something imaginary. Number two, what happens when he gets out and accuses me of things that are completely untrue is that all of a sudden that kindles the crazies out there, and I have threats upon my life, harassment of my family and my children with obscene phone calls because people are lying about me. Now, I guess you could say, well, that's the way it goes. I can take the hit. Well, it makes a difference because, as some of you may know, just about 3 or 4 weeks ago, on December 21st, a person was arrested who was on their way from Sacramento to Washington, D.C. at a speed stop in Iowa. And the police asked him where he was going, and he was going to Washington, D.C. to kill Dr. Fauci. And they found in his car an AR-15 and multiple magazines of ammunition because he thinks that maybe I'm killing people. So I ask myself, why would Senator want to do this? So go to Rand Paul website and you see fire Dr. Fauci with a little box that says contribute here. You can do $5, $10, $20, $100. So you are making a catastrophic epidemic for your political gain. So the
You
only
have
thing
politically
that, the only
attacked
thing that I
your
can-
colleagues and in a politically reprehensible
The
way
only thing that I
attack their
can think of-
reputation.
Okay.
You won't defend it. You
No,
won't
well,
argue it.
I'm
You'll just
sorry,
simply
but
turn
we're
around
going
the
to
attack.
continue this hearing. We
Yeah.
have a number of questions from
Just
other
one
senators.
more minute, please.
Well,
If
Dr.
I-
Fauci, I really appreciate your response, but we do have a number of questions from senators, and we do have a second round, and I'm being asked to make sure that everybody has their time. So thank you.
Thank you very much for allowing me, Madam Chair.
All right, so that's the latest of the exchanges of more to come. He's doing it for political gain. And yet we have our own brothers and sisters who parrot this information as if it's facts. Rand Paul never sourced up not one time. He actually does not have any sources. Because if he listened to the epidemiologists and the virologists, actually not the epidemiologists or immunologists, if he goes and listens to the virologists will educate the man on what the heck viruses do. And this here begins the whole problem of the arguments and the information that goes. But absolutely, he daggered them. He daggered them with the whole, if you go to Rand Paul's website, you're going to find X, Y, and Z. He killed them. Is it political gain? You know what I'm saying? At the expense of human life. I think I do have somebody that's tuned in tonight that was asking me a bunch of questions, and if they don't mind, I'm gonna go in the chat and I'm gonna actually address them some part in this particular video as I segue through my particular sources. But I do want to say something. This is remnants. This exchange between Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci is remnants to something that's making certain people vaccine hesitant. Still to this day, no matter how many people dying, almost 1 million people are dead from a virus that we have a vaccine for that prevents death. And we have people that are making people more hesitant due to misinformation, and they never provide credentialed sources that actually substantiate their positions. And I have to argue against other people's opinions when they don't have the evidence to actually educate people properly. So if you're tuned in to this, if you don't mind, I'm you know what, I'm not gonna wait. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get directly into it. So here's the thing. And I'm gonna read it just like it was written to me. If you don't mind, I'm not gonna say your name, not gonna let people know who you are, and then I'm gonna try to deal with it. So my friend, the one who I told you is anti-vaccine, and he's a holistic health person, told me about 3 cases of people who either died or had adverse effects after taking the vaccine. He said one of them was a young sister and a brother who got the vaccine the same time, and the brother died and the sister lived. Also, he said a guy got it and he got blood clots and fighting for his life. When I hear this, I get concerned. The guy also listens to Gary Knoll, who is against the vaccine. Gary Knoll has said hundreds of thousands of people have died or had adverse effects after taking the vaccine, but it's been being underreported by VAERS and news media. He said also, we are going to see these things come to light with more people being affected by the vaccines in about 2 years from now. Just wondering if you could address this. I canceled during the vaccine after my friend talked to me about these things and told me not to take it. I'm reading your book, but the way people like my friend views things is like it's a big cover up. Not saying it's so, but people like my friend would think you were being misled by mainstream media and sources. So let's go and break this down. Friend told you who's an anti-vaxxer and is a holistic healthcare person that there were 3 cases of people who listen closely, who either died or had adverse effects after taking the vaccine. So your friend doesn't know if the people died, but he doesn't know if the people had adverse effects, but he's saying 3 people either died or had adverse effect. Doesn't make sense. Which one is it? So that lets me know the hesitancy in the very first comment that your friend made is invalid. Then he goes on to say, he said one of them was a young sister and brother who got the vaccine the same time, and the brother died and the sister lived. Where's the evidence of the brother dying and the sister living? Which vaccine did they take? When did they get it? And when did this death take place or transpire? Now, let's move on. He said a guy got it and he got blood clots and fighting for his life. Now we all know this for a fact, right? We all know about this quote unquote blood clots. Which vaccine causes blood clots? Anybody know? Anybody know which vaccine causes blood clots? There's only one vaccine that has been reporting blood clots, and that's Johnson & Johnson's vaccine. People ain't even getting Johnson & Johnson's vaccine. And the blood clots that have been reported were only in a minority, and the blood clots were actually in women, European women, and some European men. And one woman, when it was first diagnosed and reported, there was 7 women, European women of a particular age group, who actually got blood clots. One of them transitioned. One white woman. And that was like a year or so ago. There it is, Zane. Yes, 6 cases at that time. We did that show on this channel. So now we didn't get beyond that, right? Because they paused Johnson & Johnson's vaccine efforts, and then they investigated Johnson & Johnson's, and then they found out what the true issues was with that particular patient, and then they continued Johnson & Johnson's vaccines. There has been no blood clotting in Moderna or Pfizer, and that has transpired or led to any of that stuff. And as far as reporting goes, because you do mention here, I don't care nothing about Gary. No, that's smoke and mirrors. This whole, but you did say something about VAERS. You do know that after you take the vaccine, you can register to report any of your signs and symptoms. That information is also published through VAERS. So if someone is saying that there's underreporting transpiring, then that would mean that all the people who got vaccinated didn't go and sign up for the reporting themselves so that they can report their signs and symptoms. Because guess what? These adverse effects only last 1 to 3 days for people. And everyone has a list of what those adverse effects are. And if you have, and you have my book, and I know if, because you got it, you purchased the book, and I appreciate that. In the book, I tell you what those adverse effects are. I have the actual primary sources for you in there, published through the FDA. The statement with all that information in my book. All right, so the underreporting thing is a pseudoscientific claim. None of these claims have been supported by evidence at all. And I hope I'm not, disrespecting you, because I know it's kind of late in your area, your East Coast, and you may be asleep, or maybe you're tuning in and almost asleep. So hopefully you make it to this point. Then he also said we are going to see this thing come to light with more people being affected by the vaccine in 2 years. Let me deal with that. First of all, if you're going to have any long-term effects from any vaccine, it's going to happen within the first 45 days, the first month and a half. No matter what vaccine it is, and in vaccine history, no related symptoms have ever produced 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years down the line. So this myth of 2 years is ridiculous, because initially they said everybody was going to die in 2 years. Now they done moved the needle. So now nobody's dying from the vaccine. They got the vaccine. Now they're moving it to another 2 years. And then we get 2 years from now, and then it's going to be another 2 years. This is bad, very, very bad. Misleading information. And I know this person would never give you a source. And every time you come to me and ask me questions, I always provide you with information and sources to help you educate yourself so that you can make an informed decision. But some kind of way, I get this information and it's never sourced up. There's nothing that I can read on your friend's behalf to substantiate any of the claims your friend made. And this whole myth about a cover up. Why the hell would why would they cover something up like that? We have almost 1 million people dead from this virus. What is it to cover up? The vaccine, since it's been administered, has prevented more deaths than us just sitting back and not doing nothing. It's been more preventable in its approach than anything that anyone else could ever come up with. And for the record, Sean doesn't listen to mainstream media. Sean doesn't listen to certain sources. Sean has a methodology that has to deal with everything related to how I make sure that this information is valid for our people. And I use that methodology to scrutinize my sources and to make sure that I'm on point so that I can let you know that getting the vaccine is the best decision that you can make. Why? Because we're going to talk about that here in just a second. It segues right into why you should get vaccinated. Straight up and down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen now. And I'm going to walk this thing down this way. And I'm going to go backwards. We're going to go back to do a little history lesson. Real quick. And this is also, some of this information is in my book, but I just want to touch on a couple of things that you're looking at right now. And as we walk down, and we're going to get into it. So it says mRNA vaccines contain messenger RNA, a single-stranded RNA molecule that complements DNA. It is created in the nucleus. When DNA is transcribed by RNA polymers to create pre-mRNA. Pre-mRNA is the spliced into mRNA. Don't get confused when you see the RNA and DNA, they're in a relationship. All right, if it's double-stranded, it's referring to DNA. If it's single-stranded, it's referring to RNA. But it is telling you how DNA does what it does. It, and where it comes from. So it is created in the nucleus when DNA is transcribed by RNA polymers. This is why they found out how important RNA was to our existence. RNA is the way to play, but DNA tells a story. All in all, scientists were head over heels about DNA, but RNA was actually providing the credentials to bag up DNA. But anyway, pre-mRNA is then spliced into the mRNA, which is exported from the nucleus to the cytoplasm and read by ribosomes. Y'all remember me talking about each one, teach one? Anyone who's been following me through this whole journey, I've been trying to use certain things to help us get to a point to where we can actually interpret this data. So when we talked about mRNA and the vaccines and how it gets to the it doesn't go to the nucleus of the cell, it stays at the outer layer of the cell. It transcribes and then it communicates. With Johnson & Johnson, a viral vector vaccine, it has to go to the DNA. It has to get to the nucleus of the cell for it to transcribe, and then it takes a longer process. mRNA doesn't. It just needs to get to the cell where it can transcribe. Then it can teach the ribosomes. As you can see, the cytoplasm can then be read by ribosomes. And then the ribosomes then make the proteins. This is what I'm talking about. Each one, teach one. The ribosomes in your body, if you ever seen that video where I did on ribosomes, showing you how fast they're being, how they're making copies and communicating and going out is real, real fast. It's nice. Anyway, mRNA vaccines use lab-created mRNA encapsulated within nanoparticles. Translation of the mRNA results in the development of the protein antigen that triggers an immune response. So if you don't understand anything that's going on or what's being said here, we're basically talking about the vaccine gets to the cell. From the cell, it is you could pretty much say that like the cytoplasm. All right, cool. You there? All right. So the cell, let's just use cell and not cyto. So it gets to the cell, where it can be read by the ribosomes, and the ribosomes can make the protein. So the ribosomes are your teachers. The mRNA is their syllabus. The teacher needs their syllabus so they can educate the proteins to be made that goes throughout your body. The proteins will be your students. Your teacher creates the syllabus. I mean, your teacher has a syllabus, or whatever we could say. I'm just saying it this way. It's easy for me to say it. The teacher grabs the syllabus, knows the curriculum, learns the curriculum. Then it goes out and teaches it to the kids. It's just like that. That's it. All right. A little few step process to kind of make it do. He said big DNA energy. Now, the mRNA vaccines deliver mRNA directly to the cytoplasm where it is translated by the ribosomes. We're on par. All right. We're taking one thing and we're going in one direction. When we get to that direction, then we're speaking to, we're transmitting or translating to the ribosome so that it can make the proteins and it can be copied throughout. Its presence in the cell is transient, and it is quickly metabolized and eliminated via cellular processing mechanisms. So it's basically telling you once that stuff comes into the body, it has a shelf life, it has a process. What we do know today is that shelf life or process is not 1 to 3 days. We have some evidence that process is extended a little longer than what people would anticipate, but it is not a danger or a problem for that. Now, unlike conventional vaccines, which can take months to produce, mRNA vaccines can be made quickly and easily. All right, because they are based on an organism genetic code. This is why the genetic sequencing of the virus was important earlier on in the pandemic. The concept of mRNA vaccines was first developed in the 1990s. This is the concept. Pre that, when you're talking about the 87s, the 1980s, which is in my book, where you have these scientists coming in from other countries to deal with the mRNA research. This is where that path begins. But growing on that body of knowledge from the 80s, in the early 1990s, all right, mRNA vaccines was first developed, but they had problems. What was the difficulty? Instability of the mRNA, as well as the delivery challenges and other factors. The field did not make significant strides until the past decade, when technological advances and investments led to significant development. So we're in 2020, right? When we get a working vaccine, that's 30 years. So for people to say that this whole vaccine process was made too quickly, they've been working on mRNA vaccines since the 90s. And mRNA studies has been going on since the 80s, the mid to late 80s, going into the 90s. So when people make that assertion that these vaccines were made too quickly, we just killed that. We just took the chair from up under the butt and it fell on the floor. Now, prior to the pandemic, mRNA vaccines targeted infectious diseases included HIV-1, rabies, Zika, influenza, who were already in clinical trials, as were mRNA vaccines targeting multiple hematologic and solid organ malgenesis. Soon after the COVID-19 pandemic emerged, Pfizer and BioNTech and Moderna got to work. So we get the BNT162b2 and we get the mRNA 1273. Both of them have changed their names now. Both of them are approved on the market and working. But remember, I'm about to tell you why it's important for you to be vaccinated. Don't let me forget that. I can't forget anyway, because when I get into my very last source, or my third source, or no, yeah, my third source, or I might just go ahead and bag it up. It's gonna clear the air. So here we go. Both tested with high efficacy during their trial data. If you don't have my book, go get What Sars Cov2 Taught Me. I got some trial data information in there and how things transpire. We also have shows on the Matsu Warrior Clan YouTube channel that actually discuss all of that. So I don't want to get into all of that. What I do want to get into is the safety. All right. So they found out how safe these vaccines and infectious these vaccines were through phase 3 clinical trial data right before they rolled it out as an EUA. All right. Out of all the people that was in these trials, and this information is also in my book, right? It wasn't that many problems in these trials. There was only adverse effects, and they were reported by age group, sex, and gender. With the younger people complaining about pain at the injection site. The older people would just have, a little pain at the injection site, but their pain would subside. They don't have all these other reactions, but other people do, because older people, they continue to get vaccinated. As part of the adverse effects, they built up a database regarding acute allergic reactions, myocarditis, pericarditis, and neurologic events. By the way, all of this information is in the description of this particular video. No matter if you're watching from Science with Sean or the Matsu Warrior Clan YouTube channel, I source up everything. I ain't really gonna talk too much to you without a source. Then it talks about immunogenicity. I'm not going to get here because I don't want to lose the point. But if I do speak to this, it talks about the antibody response in seropositive persons after a single dose. So this is telling us, right, that the immune protection after a single dose would be robust. But what would it cover? See, earlier on in the whole thing, we didn't know how well a single dose would do. Would a single dose prevent death? A single dose has the potential to prevent death, prevent the spread of infectious disease and hospitalizations, but it's at a lesser rate. Whereas the double dose, right, when we get to that second dose, increases the protection level for the spread of against the spread of infectious disease, hospitalizations, and death. So we have more information regarding those. Now, I'm not going to go too far on that. Like I said, I just wanted to touch that basis. So I'm talking about vaccine benefits. So let me go ahead and get straight into my spiel, and I'm gonna end with the latest news that was published in the Journal of Nature. So we're talking about vaccine, the protection and why you should get it, and I'm going to tell you why. The vaccination after COVID sank reinfection rates. And we have 2 studies that bolster protection with vaccines for those with past infections. So there's this thing out there called hybrid immunity. Hybrid immunity is, for people that don't know what hybrid immunity is, hybrid immunity occurs when you've been naturally infected from the virus, you recover, and then you get vaccinated. So that's an example of hybrid immunity. I'm going to say it again. Hybrid immunity is when you've been naturally infected by the virus, you've overcome the spread of the infectious disease, and then you turn around and get vaccinated. You're now afforded 2 levels of 2 different types of protection. The reason for that is because when you're naturally infected, your body isn't trained to recognize the virus again. It's a different level of protection. The vaccine trains your immune system to recognize the spike. So they call it hybrid immunity because you have 2 different types of protection that will lower your rate of reinfection. So let's go. For those with a prior COVID-19 infection, getting at least one dose of a vaccine was tied to a significantly lower rate of reinfection, and getting 2 doses provided substantial protection for more than a year after the initial infection. A pair of new studies found. In a retrospective study using electronic medical records from one of Israel's largest health services, provided reinfections rates were far lower among the previously infected who received at least one dose of Pfizer vaccine compared with those who remained unvaccinated. So it was 2.46 versus 10.21 cases per 100,000 a day. All right. And this was also reported in the Journal of Medicine, New England Journal of Medicine. And they found no difference in vaccine effectiveness between 1 and 2 doses in the population. A second study published in New England Journal of Medicine more than 35,000 healthcare workers in the UK also found that previous infection plus vaccination provided substantial protection for more than a year after the initial infection. Protection against infection with 2 doses of a vaccine waned around 6 months without prior reinfection, but immunity only began to wane considerably after a year. All right. So those infected and not vaccinated had issues. Adding 2 doses of a vaccine to prior infection led to protection of more than 90% against reinfection. And that protection didn't appear to wane up to 18 months after infection. I'm going to say it again. So if you've been infected and had 2 doses, the 90% against reinfection, and your protection didn't appear to wane until up to 18 months. It's almost 2-year protection level. The finding from both studies coincided with the Delta wave. This we knew, and noted that it's unknown whether their results held true for Omicron because of the mutations, the 35 or 37 mutations at the spike level of Omicron can avoid that. So this is pretty much Delta wave information. Still strong. It says that the doctor says that the evidence that was gathered in the study during the surge of Delta variant in Israel supports a public health policy of vaccinating patients who have recovered from COVID, particularly in places where Delta variant is still of concern. Hopkins and colleagues cautioned that the period of waning noted in their study occurred during the Delta surge. So that may account for more pronounced waning of protection in this cohort, given reduced vaccination efforts against the Delta variant. So since March 2021, Israel Ministry of Health was recommended a single vaccine dose for previously infected people in the United States, which is where we are. If you've been previously infected, they're going to give you 2 doses. If you've never been vaccinated, if you had been infected, they're going to give you 2 doses, no matter what. Not 1. Israel gave 1. But the protection only lasted, given at least 3 months after recovery. So they were doing all of that. Natural immunity initially made citizens eligible for the country's Green Pass. The health department scraped that rule in October 2021 and began requiring at least 1 vaccine dose 6 months after infection to get a Green Pass. For this study, Arbel and colleagues looked at data from Clalit, which covers about 52% of Israel population on reinfections from the 1st of March to November 26th of last year. Of 149,000 patients who recovered from infection, 83,000 or 56% of those people were subsequently vaccinated. Overall, 354 vaccinated patients were reinfected during that time compared with 2,168 unvaccinated. Look at the difference. The differences between the vaccinated and unvaccinated were larger in the younger cohort. Among those 16 to 64, there were 326 and 2,120 reinfections in the vaccinated and unvaccinated, respectively. It was a 2.61 versus 10.79 person, 100,000 per person day, while there were 28 and 48 reinfections, respectively, among those 65 and up, because they were being more cautious. This could be due to the fact that older people who had been previously infected observed enhanced social distancing and other required precautions, like I just told you. They went back to staying away from people. In adjustment analysis, the hazard ratio for reinfection in the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated was 0.18. For those 16 to 64, it was 0.40. And those 65 and up, was less. So there we go. Thus, an estimated effectiveness of 82% of the younger people, 60% of the older people would still be considered substantial protection, they pointed out. Now, a second analysis notes that no significant difference in protection between 1 and 2 vaccine doses. Overall, 81% of the vaccinated patients received just 1 dose, 18.3 received 2 doses, and 0.7 received 3 doses. Given the previous exposure to the virus, it seems that the primary vaccine dose is recovered patients provided a more robust and longer immunogenetic response than the first dose alone in patients without COVID. The study was limited by observational nature and because it didn't assess data on the severity of infection, hospitalization, or death. Now, a study from Qatar reported last week in New England Journal of Medicine found that prior infection on its own held up against severe illness and death during the country's Omicron surge. That's good to know. For some people, it held up. All right. Reasons. This is the reason why to get vaccinated. That level of protection is there, especially after infection. Now, long COVID is less likely in the vaccinated. So for those of you who have caught COVID, experienced long COVID, still struggling with symptoms, and can't seem to get past that weird cough, weird breathing sound that you make, the wheezing you're doing at night. Yeah, for them to travel outside the country in Israel, a green card is a necessity or whatever. But going through all of those things in those stages, it is what it is. But see, for vaccinated people are less likely to get so-called long COVID, while those infected while unvaccinated may recover from persistent symptoms faster if they get a shot. So they're telling you, if you've had COVID and you got vaccinated, your likelihood of recovering from those persistent symptoms is faster. Fully vaccinated people who became infected with COVID were roughly half as likely to have any symptoms lasting more than a month. I've seen that. 78% less likely to have symptoms lasting 12 to 20 weeks, and 13% less likely to have at least one symptom at 6 months, according to 6 of 8 studies summarized in a rapid evidence briefing document. So one preprint study of moderate quality suggested the opposite, a more than 2-fold higher risk of symptoms of 4 weeks from the date of diagnosis versus unvaccinated participants. But it wasn't clear why this study contradicted the rest, the document noted, calling for more analysis. In studies that broke down symptoms individually, there were lower likelihood of developing olfactory dysfunction and significantly lower risk at 6 months for nausea, fatigue, and hair loss. Yeah, hair loss. Yeah, think about that. You got lung diseases, myalgia, and other pain. These findings are likely an underestimate of the effectiveness of vaccination in preventing long COVID, since the studies included only vaccinated people who were infected, not those who had infected prevent entirely, the document pointed out. The review also found that people who had already had long COVID but then got vaccinated were more likely to have improvement in symptoms, either immediately or in the weeks afterward, compared with those who remained unvaccinated. Although most had no change in symptoms and a small number had worsened after vaccination. The one study that looked at timing of vaccination suggested that getting the shot sooner was much better than later in terms of likelihood of symptom improvement. So I want to use Kofi's wife as an example. She was infected naturally with COVID. She didn't want to get the vaccine. She isolated herself or whatever. She was on one of them little breathing tubes. She was supposed to be doing, like, if you got asthma. She ain't got no asthma. She's supposed to be doing the breathing tube thing. And then she had some other symptoms, and she was complaining about her heart and all this other stuff, chest and all this. So after she had a conversation with me and Brother Unc and respectively, and she got the vaccine, I told Kofi to keep an eye on her symptoms. And what we found out is that Kofi and I started, well, Kofi, not me. Kofi began to see some relief, right? She wasn't having to do those little breathing things no more. She wasn't complaining about certain things, or going through that time period or whatnot. She wasn't having those same problems, and she found relief from the vaccine. She's not the only one. There's a lot of people who had long COVID that lost their sense of taste and smell for more than 6 months, began recovering their taste and smell, after being vaccinated, and other symptoms like, slight headaches and memory loss or stuff like that. So, of course, I ain't gonna read the rest of that because it really ain't talking about too much of nothing. But the fact of the vaccine being a key element in preventing long COVID is another reason you really don't want to deal with long COVID. Now, on to the actual meat and potatoes. So you probably seen this on somebody's social media site where they screenshot probably this first little half and just posted it and just left it right here. mRNA vaccine-induced antibodies more effective than natural immunity in neutralizing SARS-CoV-2 and its high affinity variants. That's a big deal if you just read the title. But what's even more surprising in this is if you just read the abstract. And then we're going to get into a little bit of the results. So it says several variants of SARS-CoV-2 have emerged. Those are mutations in the angiotensin converting enzyme, or the ACE2 receptor binding domain, RBD, are associated with increased transmission and severity. In this study, we developed both antibody quantifications and functional neutralization assays. Analysis of both COVID-19 conservalant and diagnostic cohorts strongly support the use of RBD antibody levels as an excellent surrogate to biochemical neutralizing activities. Data further revealed that the samples from the mRNA vaccinated individuals had a median of 7 times higher RBD antibody levels and similar degree of increased neutralization activities against the receptor binding domain and the ACE2 binding than those from natural infection. This is a big deal. I'm going to say this slowly. The data further revealed that the samples from mRNA vaccinated individuals had a median of 17 times higher receptor binding domain antibody levels and a similar degree of increased neutralization activities against the receptor binding domains ACE2 binding than those from natural infection. Let me zoom in. My bad. How did it look? That look better? I should have PDF'd it. My bad. And that's too big. Anyway. Okay, so it continues. Our data showed that the N501, which is a site on the spike and all of that, all right, for the receptor binding domain. Remember, you got the spike, which would be your fingers. From your wrist to your elbow would be the receptor binding domain. So at the receptor binding domain site, N501Y, it had a 5-fold higher ACE2 binding than the original variant. While some antisera from naturally infected subjects had substantially reduced neutralization ability against that same N501 site RBD. All blood samples from vaccinated individuals were highly effective in neutralizing it. So vaccinated people neutralized this one site area called the N501Y at the receptor binding domain. Thus, our data indicates that mRNA vaccination may generate more neutralizing receptor binding domain antibodies than natural immunity. It further suggests a potential need to maintain the high levels of RBD antibody levels to control the more infectious SARS-CoV-2 variants. This is a big deal for all of us who are trying to get beyond the fear level, right? The intelligent people should now not fear new variants, because they're not going to really have too much of an effect on us unless it does some super variant comes up and just mutates like a mug and evades all vaccine protection, even at your B and T cell level. I'm talking about just rip it all the way down and put us back to scratch. However, that ain't gonna be the case. All right, so you can go through this and read the introduction, and it's going to give you a bunch of information. But what you really need to focus on is what this whole study is saying, in which we've already summed it up in the abstract, and we paid close attention to what other information that we've learned along the way is telling us about this whole vaccine or natural immunity versus vaccine immunity. So the results, right? You can read them, but it's going to trick you out, and I'm going to tell you why. Many of current serology tests for RBD, which is receptor binding domain, have limitations on sensitivity, dynamic range, and unprecise or semi-quantitative, all right, to accurately determine the levels of anti-RBD antibody in SARS-CoV-2 infected individuals. We developed an electrochemiluminescence, I can't say that word, based serology assay for exceptional sensitivity and dynamic range. The assay is based on 2 antibody antigen interactions for maximum specificity. We purify recombinant wild type, which is WT-RBD, for transiently transfective 293 cells, and labeled it with either biotin for antibody capture or ruthenium, or U-tagged for antibody detection. 2 commercially available RBD monoclonal antibodies, MAB D001 and D003, were randomly selected and used as the calibrator and the reference of the standard for accurate quantification. Linear quantification ranges of at least 1,000-fold was achieved. The assay was subsequently simplified from a 3-step to a single incubation step without the loss of performance, which would allow the rapid testing completely within 1 hour. So they created a rapid testing system that would help them be able to identify, right, if these 2 things was true, if you were, if this was transpiring in you, right? If you want to go back and get, if you were infected here, if you were not infected here. These whole things was dealing with these 2 antibody antigen reactions at the WT and the RU, right? That's what they're tagging here, dealing with the receptor binding domain and so forth. So here you go, a little map that you're probably not going to figure out. And that's cool, because we ain't got to do all of that. We just need to know how to scrub the sources exactly, and then understand the methods behind it. Those are the most important things. The results and the methods are the most important things in these scientific articles. You can read the abstract, but the results and the methods are the most important. All right. So we have all the results from there, and I'm not going to get into all of that. But the clinical studies would basically come back and substantiate the claim, well, not the claim, of the assessment that's in the abstract, that the vaccine just did better at this level than natural infection. And you have to remember, natural infection doesn't train the body to recognize the spike. So the vaccine is already ahead of the natural protection because it does a better job at recognizing the spike. And then those mutation levels, it can help maneuver in there. So this is why, like, when we get new variants and the vaccine, the variants mutate, then it has to mutate in a way where it can evade our protection. But even when it evades our protection, our initial protection, which would then lure the infection, which you can't stop. You're going to always get infected by some virus. You just don't know which virus you're being affected by. That's why you think everything is a damn common cold. However, it prevents the three things that it needs to. The prevention of hospitalization, deaths, and hospitalizations, death, and the spread of infectious disease is significant here. If you think your natural protection is going to protect, your natural infection is going to protect you, then you're absolutely wrong. Omicron just disproved that. Delta disproved that. The last, and even Alpha, basically the last three variants of concern have caused reinfections in people who were previously infected with the ancestral strand D614G. Correct, Zane. It should be a commonality, but people don't understand it as such. So, dig into what this is saying for those of you who think you can handle the scientific weight. If you're looking for an assessed summary to hinge your conclusion on, I wouldn't necessarily try to stick to that. You don't have to trust anything that I'm saying. Even though I've already been saying that the vaccine provides a level of protection that natural infection doesn't, that's been the science this whole pandemic and even before the vaccine rollouts. That's what it does. The vaccine is a safer way to introduce the body to a foreign pathogen versus a natural infection. The natural infection will provide critical, how I want to say this. The risk of natural infection is greater, meaning that you could lose your life, you could develop a long-term illness, you could develop symptoms that could influence other health issues in your body that may lead to a loss of life later down the line. And you may not live as long as you probably would have if you were vaccinated. And I'm saying that to say that since vaccines have been on this earth, human life has increased. There was a time before we had inoculations and vaccinations. Human life didn't extend as far out as it has today. So you got to think, the evolution of vaccines for that. But you don't want to hinge your conclusions on anything that I say. Therefore, we have the book, What Sars Cov2 Taught Me. We have the relevance of that book and the research in that book to help you draw an honest conclusion. We have the top epidemiologists, immunologists, and virologists at our disposal for sources as well. They have classes that can help you understand a lot of this information if you don't trust me, to help you get through that. And I do my studying to be precise in influencing people, not to really like merely influence people, but to help people make a not an educated guess or anything like that, but make an educated decision on the reasons why to get vaccinated. The reward outweighs the risk. You don't get vaccinated, you're running at a high risk, and either the virus is going to vaccinate you and potentially take your life, or someone around you because you've been infected and you went around them because you were asymptomatic. and you spread the disease the virus to them people, and they inhabit that and they take them out of there, their death on you. And it's been a lot of situations like that where people were asymptomatic, went around these other people and have lost the loss of life like that. What up, Unc? But this is a good study. This study gets into the specifics of it. It's been out a couple of days. Me and Chavis, we really didn't dig too deep when it initially rolled out, because like I tell him, you got to be up early for some of this science. But we talked about it, and then 2 days ago, and then kind of moved on from it. But this is saying the things that we've already been arguing or saying for quite some time. Is that this right here is the clear reason why to get vaccinated, because that protection level is just different. RBD antibody concentration dependent, neutralizing against RBD ACE2 binding with COVID-19 antibodies from natural immunity. It just doesn't do the thing that it does. Natural immunity has a level of protection. Everybody respects that. You got to survive a natural infection. And then with Sars Cov2, your protection level is predicated on how severe your illness was. I'm going to say that again for the people in the back that don't understand what I'm saying. Your level of protection from a natural infection hinges on the severity of the disease in your body. Sean, what the hell are you saying? People who are damn near dead and succumb and survive that infection from the virus and hurdles their symptoms or the disease, right? They get through all of that, been hospitalized and all of that. They have a better protection than someone who had an asymptomatic response and had very little symptoms. Those people are more susceptible for reinfection. And you have to remember, 36% of people who have been naturally infected don't gain any type of immunity. No protection. 36%, that's a hefty number. So if you got 100 million people out there that's been that are asymptomatic and that's been infected by the virus, 36 million of them people are subjected to reinfection tenfold, because Omicron is more infectious. And so they have to continue to go through the same thing over and over and over potentially. But even the other percentage of people who recover from their symptoms, depending on the variant, you still can be reinfected. See, you have people talking about, but why am I going to waste my time getting vaccinated when I still have the chance of getting infected? It's not, the infection is not the big deal. It is the other part of that. It's infection versus disease. The prevalence of disease is what we're trying to prevent. This is why you get vaccinated, because natural infection, you just succumb to the disease to some level, and you don't know what damage is doing in your body. You don't know if your heart being attacked, your lungs being attacked, your kidney, your liver, your tongue, your brain, your eyes, your feet, your fingers, your veins. More people, and this goes back to the question the sister asked me earlier, but more people have had blood clotting issues from COVID infections than Johnson & Johnson's vaccine. I'm going to say that slowly. More people have had blood clotting issues from natural infection than a vaccine. More people have had myocarditis and pericarditis in unvaccinated people from the natural infection than the vaccination. I'm going to say it again. People who have had myocarditis, it's been more people to have myocarditis in people who've been naturally infected from this virus than a vaccine. So everything that they're trying to blame the vaccine for, multiply that times 20 for people who've been naturally infected, because the numbers are way higher. But those are the reasons why you get vaccinated. Sister, you should never cancel your appointment to protect yourself and your family and your friends and your loved ones and your children. You should never succumb to the ignorance of someone who has misled you and hasn't properly guided you in any manner or any way for you to be able to see things through. They never gave you a source. They're just your friend. That's a holistic person. That's an anti-vaxxer. A holistic anti-vaxxer could never stop me from protecting myself and my family. I don't care what kind of relationship I got with them. And I think that was very disingenuous of that person to guide you astray. So I hope I hope you allow me an opportunity to be able to answer your question. And then go from there. So 1 second for me. All right, my bad. Some kind of way I was still logged in. My phone. All right, so questions, comments, concerns. Questions, comments, concerns. Need to adjust that. The doctor's got it right though. Let me see what's going on. Mongo says, I forgot to mention, Sean, before my mom got vaccinated, she caught ammonia. You mean pneumonia. And was in the hospital. I was so scared for her, bro. Her voice was hoarse. Yep, she had COVID voice. But they said she had fluid on her lungs. Yeah, that's a big deal. They got to get the fluid off her lungs. But she good now and she got vaccinated. That's what's up. Yeah, I know. When he meant pneumonia. He meant pneumonia. So yeah, the reality of it is this, man. Like, You don't want to go through those situations to whereas you're thinking, I should have got vaccinated, or you know what, I'm not going to get vaccinated. Like, what are we thinking about when we make that sudden change? What is the thought process behind? Yeah, that's what he said. Oh, y'all can't see some of the comments because if you're on one of the channels, like if you're on the Mossy, you can't see what's going on the Science with Sean channel. And there's they cutting up over there on the Science with Sean channel. So yeah, he said ammonia. Look. Let's have some fun with Mongo. It's a comment right there, just so the people on the other side can see. But you don't let nobody make a decision for you, right? You take what they're saying into consideration, and then you take what other people saying into consideration. So if you're going to be scientific in your endeavors to be able to answer questions that have to do with your life and your livelihood, then you want to consider the information that's more sustainable to you than a feeling. If it's about feelings and emotions, and if it's playing on your feelings and emotions, 9 times out of 10, that information's whack. It's pseudo as all get out. When you become uncomfortable and you're at that point of, you know what I mean? Like, you could go either way, or I mean, when the truth is revealing, but it's a tough truth. See, the things that make you feel comfort and feel good, that ain't the truth. It's got to go against your initial position. If your initial position was to not get vaccinated, and I haven't been vaccinated in a while, but this is the one vaccination, the one vaccination that I got. I made sure that. He said, I need, was you smoking, Mongo? That boy, that crazy. That boy said ammonia. His mama called ammonia. But can't no anti-vaccine holistic person tell me how to protect myself, because it's bigger than myself. I got kids. I got family. Nah, I ain't dealing with none of that, bro. You ain't making no decision for me. My whole family vaccinated. My friend, when I was in Dallas, my friend who was in the hospital, went to the ER 3 times. He vaccinated, but he waited after his natural infection. You know, he had natural infection or whatnot, but he was like, my doctor told me wait 8 months. So he wouldn't listen to me. He would listen to his doctor, but he succumbed to getting vaccinated. So that was cool. So look, man, it's 11, man. I've been on here an hour and 26 minutes. It looks like don't nobody have any questions, comments, or concerns. So I'm probably going to slide out unless somebody want to talk about some of the information. I know y'all was killing Rand Paul earlier. The Nike company isn't playing. If their employees aren't vaxxed, they firing them on the spot. I heard they let 1,500 people go. Yeah. Right, Zane. But you know they pseudo. They'll never listen to them. Juju said green card. Yep. They giving them folk green card, Juju. Indonesia says, go hard, Sean. Got into it with a homie over 8 kids getting myocarditis after getting vaxxed. Now they believe they trying to kill the babies. Shaking my head. Facts. Look, man, we talked about this myocarditis before. This myocarditis is rare. For every, I think I told her millions, but that was a mistake. I think it's like for every 100,000, like 100 and some thousand people, one person may experience myocarditis, and it's treatable, and it's actually it actually will take care of itself after a couple of days. So if they administered it in 2 million children, you know what I mean? You might get 20 children or something like that that might have myocarditis or something. So 22 million out of 2 million vaccinated children, 20 of them develop myocarditis. That's the likelihood of it. So that was kind of crazy. But I think I think this whole thing, right? And I think Brendan said it best initially when he came in earlier when we were talking about it's a shame that this global health issue has been politicized. And that's where a lot of the misinformation comes from. It stems from people that have an agenda. I ain't getting paid to talk about vaccines. Shoot, I don't even get paid. I ain't getting paid for none of that stuff. I ain't no spokesman for for Moderna or Pfizer. I'm not a spokesman for the CDC or the FDA. I ain't got no affiliation with none of them, nor will I, entertain any of that. I'm a proponent for black people. I am, man, listen, I am trying to protect the people that I care about and protect the people that I respect and love the most and get that information to everybody who can utilize it and build on it upon themselves so they can protect the people that they love and care about the most as well. Like I'm not capping for I don't even watch the news. I don't watch the news. I ain't read none of the newspapers or anything like that. I read an article if it's published by a news site so that I can obtain the sources from that and get down to the nitty gritty. But I ain't doing all of that news watching and trying to hear what the he say, she say. I don't even listen to the politicians on this. When you talking about science, this level of science, when you talking about immunology, virology, epidemiology, which are the three levels that are doing the most work right now, not discounting other bodies of science. But if you ain't coming to me with them, you ain't prepared to talk to me. If you don't come with your best. Don't bring me a cardiologist. Y'all remember the dude from Texas who was standing in front of Congress and talking all that smack? The cardiologist, he kept using A&M's name. Yeah, the sister brought me that dude too. Asked me what did I think about McCullough. I'm like, for real, McCullough? For real? The dude ain't even in the field. He an expert. But this is what's coming out. But you know what? I'm gonna be honest with you, man. You from New York, so I expected it. I expected pushback. Not really pushback, but I expected because you're from New York for you to buy into a more whatever someone else says that might be your friend. I don't have to be your friend to tell you the truth. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. But your friend lying. But people up there in New York are more susceptible to buy into the bullshit because nine times out of 10, there's a lot of pseudoisms that cultivate around New York, and people get away with it, and they try to distract themselves from learning from scientifically literate people. Therefore, they're more susceptible to buy the bullshit. And it is what it is. It ain't just New York. It's California too. It's Atlanta. Because the level of consciousness now is with all the more solid information, was I think it was coming up out of Atlanta more recently than not. That's just my opinion. Mongo said, check this crazy shit. My coworker said, let me put this on the screen. He says, we born with COVID. What? He said, nigga, you don't get the out of here with that. Stop listening to yeah, Facebook and IG and memes. This boy said we born with COVID. He says, I don't listen to the people in the field with degrees in the said subject, man. He says the lines around the block over in my hood on Fulton Street for COVID tests and a vax shot, most all black people and Hispanics. See, you shooting at OG. Nah, I ain't shooting at OG. Nah, I'm just saying Atlanta's like the hub now for like information, just to be real, that it's no longer hard, Harlem. Think about all the information that's coming up out of New York. Is like two people that really standing on business in that circle, in the sub circle. But as far as, like elderly or something like that, there might be a few solid more people, but you know what I'm saying? It's like 2 or 3 people, and then, that's really kicking that information. Like ain't nobody doing it like when you think about information coming up out of the from up north, it ain't like the like Truth and Raw. You know what I'm saying? Even you can slide G in on certain subjects. You know what I mean? Like, Reggie on some subjects, but he succumbed to his pseudoisms because he didn't I don't know what's going on with Reggie, but it is what it is. But it's not a lot of solid people no more where the information used to thrive out of New York. So therefore you can buy into the bull crap. That's why you get people like InfoDG and Samaj running around saying some of the things that they actually say and get away with it and are part of the problem. They're not a solution anymore. They're not solutions. Romanticizing and caping and doing all of that stuff is not a solution. Like, bro, give me a solution. If something is a problem in our community, give me a solution to that problem. We're not getting solution from these people, right? Our elders did a better job at that. You know what I'm saying? The true educators, the ones that they claim to sit at the feet at, they were the problem solvers. They were the educators and problem solvers. So that is that. Like, you got to stand on principle and you got to stand on business. Like you got to do those things. If you trying to solve issues for black folk, bro, they ain't got a solution. They got some nice ass information that's gonna confuse the hell out of you and make you believe in something. You want to believe in something, that's all they gonna give you. They gonna give you something to believe in, but they ain't gonna give you nothing substantial for you to liberate yourself and your family, except for something that's just gonna feel a little sweet. That's just how I feel about it. And if all you want to do is just have a new belief, then you know what I'm saying, that's gonna be the hub. The hub for new beliefs is the pseudos. You don't get no more creative than that. You just have to be careful. But yeah, man, I'm rambling at this point, man. I mean, I think that the information that I provided for everybody today is substantial. We talked about long COVID, the vaccine, the reason why to get vaccinated, the new study that came out in the Journal of Nature, which is things that we already knew. I addressed the sisters' questions. I mean, I can back it up with a lot of science, but I got shows on those things. And I've been doing this since the pandemic started, and it's like 2 years into this information regarding COVID specifically. And then, another year or so or something, just, vaccine history and science. And just some other little preliminary stuff, man. Like, I really be trying to move on to a whole nother topic and just kind of get back in the bag. But when you're in the middle of a pandemic, it's like you can't get away from the information. And you try to make sure that our people are educated, properly educated, and armed with the right stuff so that they can protect themselves and make sound decisions. So yeah, man, I don't know who gonna be live this weekend. I think Kofi might be live. I don't know if Brother Ben gonna be live. Sutek. I do know that Chavis has a presentation that he should be doing on Kofi Pieside research team. He's going to get into the whole marijuana and COVID thing. He's got that presentation done. He hasn't set aside any time, and you know, maybe I get with him sometime tomorrow afternoon or evening, or one of these days, so that he can get into that presentation for y'all and bring y'all that information. So, you know, man, y'all already know how I'm gonna do, man, and we're gonna get it in there, but I'm gonna let y'all rock out.